Okay, we now have a quorum for the Air Pollution Control Board, and so I'll call the meeting to order. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Board Member Bennett?
Here.
Board Member Broggie?
Here.
Board Member Foy? Board Member Long?
Here.
Board Member Morgan?
Here.
Board Member Parks?
Here.
Board Member Ramirez? Board Member Sharkey? Board Member Zaragoza?
Here.
Chair Pollak?
Here. Okay, and Mr. Villegas, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're up to item 4 on our agenda, which is the minutes for our last meeting held on February 14. A motion would be in order to adopt the minutes.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are adopted. Item 5 is agenda review. Any revisions to the agenda, or shall we take it as published?
Take it as published?
Okay. Take that as a motion and second. All in favor of approving the agenda as published, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Item 6 is public comment. Do we have any public speaker cards?
Nope.
No, Chair Pollak, we have not received any.
Okay. Item 7, board comments. Any comments from board members?
Only I had a nice trip to Mexico.
Oh, how was the air quality?
Great. It was in Guadalajara,
Oh, okay.
our sister city, Outlan, and Manzanillo, which is just like Hawaii. Folks, Manzanillo is beautiful. It's a great place to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Anyone else? Okay, there being no other comments, we'll move to item 8, which is our consent agenda, which is actually just item 9, which is to receive and file for the unscheduled vacancy notice of Ken Simons on the advisory committee. Ken Simons is a member of my city council in Moore Park, and did that disqualify him from being on the advisory council?
No, it wouldn't.
Oh, okay. So, and I don't, he hasn't spoken to me about this, so I don't know what his reasons are. But a motion would be in order to adopt the consent item.
Move the approval of consent items.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, item is approved. Item 10, approval and authorization for our air pollution control officer to sign a letter to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to adopt ultra-low nitrogen oxide exhaust emission standards for on-road heavy-duty trucks and engines. Mr. Villegas, please explain.
Chair Pollak, members of the board, good afternoon. Mike Villegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. During our presentation last month on the Air Quality Management Plan, we noted that 51% of all the nitrogen oxide emissions onshore Ventura County come from on-road vehicles. CARB has made incredible progress in reducing emissions from light-duty vehicles and trucks. In order to continue reducing NOx emissions, CARB, the California Air Resources Board, plans to adopt an ultra-low NOx standard for heavy-duty diesel engines. This would drop the standard from 0.2 grams per brake horsepower hour down to 0.02, a 90% reduction. CARB staff has the expertise in the technical feasibility and cost effectiveness of mobile source controls, and they believe this standard is feasible. If California adopts the regulation, since it would only apply to vehicles purchased in California, 14 years after the regulation was adopted, we would see a 30% reduction in nitrogen oxides. However, if there was a national standard adopted by the US EPA, we'd see a 70% reduction in NOx emissions in the same time period. From my perspective, these additional NOx reductions would place Ventura County in a very strong position to achieve the more stringent 75 part per billion standard, which we'll be starting working on that plan in the next few years. In addition, these reductions would decrease the potential air impacts of goods movement programs, such as the operations at the Port of Hueneme. This in turn would not only improve air quality, but it would protect well-paying jobs associated with the port's operations. In addition, these reductions in NOx could serve as a backstop, kind of an insurance, just in case the projections on the light-duty side on the introduction of electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles doesn't come through as projected. As engineers, we're trained to optimize solutions to problems. And from my perspective, the district's goal is to achieve and optimize a solution to achieving air quality standards in Ventura County, as public health is our #1 goal. But if we can achieve this standard at a lower cost and protect well-paying jobs, I think we should pursue that option. On the technical feasibility and cost side, even if CARB and the EPA, after working on this issue, determine that the 0.02 gram per brake horsepower hour standard is not achievable, setting a standard below the 0.2 standard at 0.1 or more likely 0.05 would still provide significant emission reductions. In summary, since these are very cost-effective emission reductions and we believe that this technology is feasible, we're recommending that your board authorize me to sign the attached joinder and transmit it to EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. I'll be happy to take questions.
Any questions, Mr. Morgan?
I have a couple, three. I think we're going down a path that went the wrong way when it came to weapons also. If you look at weapons on the East Coast where they sell them in one state and they don't the other, and people go across the other state and buy those weapons because but what happens is, how about trucks? Truck sales, truck manufacturers. Do we have many truck manufacturers in California?
That I'm not sure of, but not that many vehicles were actually purchased here.
I'm saying now that you're going to say that you have to do this or this, it's easy to go across in Nevada, other places, and buy vehicles, buy trucks especially. Won't that encourage people to buy out of the state and we sell
Well,
fewer
actually,
trucks?
we're proposing a national standard.
Oh, I know, but let's start at the national first, because we can't do anything that's going to help us if the national doesn't do it.
Exactly, and that's what we're advocating. Since
But
we
you're
know-
advocating state too, though, right now.
Well, CARB has committed to adopting the state standard as part of their state implementation plan, which is kind of their air quality management plan, because they realize that in Southern California, they're going to need every NOx reduction that they can get their hands on, in essence, to show attainment. So CARB is going to commit to just about anything that's technically feasible. But obviously, it would put California businesses, especially any heavy-duty vehicle
Right.
dealerships, at a disadvantage if it was just a California-only
I
standard.
think if we have to, we've got to study and look at the carb business, but we also have to look and study our jobs. We're losing jobs. This is just another way of them going across the border and buying it. Let's start and work hard with the EPA first. That's the way I'd look at it.
That's what we're proposing to do. And like I said, if you can reduce emissions associated with goods movement, and when you look at Southern California, 40% of all the goods coming into the United States come through San Pedro and Long Beach.
But
That's
you're
a lot
including
of trucks.
But you're including us too in state of California, so then
Yes.
go ahead and do this now before EPA did it. Okay? You guys, you got to put them both together.
Yes.
And if we're going, we're going to encourage this, but let's start working on this before we do this and lose more jobs.
Exactly, and that's, I think it's just going to make a lot more sense if we had a national standard.
Yes, that first.
Mr. Zaragoza?
But Mike, if you buy a vehicle out of state
Yes.
and you bring it into California, don't you have to meet California standards?
Now, with light duty, yes.
Is that no?
Although there are waivers, when you move, let's say you lived in Texas and
Yeah.
your job transferred you from Dallas to Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
you will be able to register your vehicle here.
Here without,
Yes.
and you don't have to do the smog thing or?
You will have to smog it,
Smog's
but you're
in-
going to be
Just as an
passing
example, yeah,
the national standard.
National standards.
okay.
And so I'm just saying, I hate losing jobs if we do it alone and don't, look for the EPA to do theirs first. I hate
We
losing jobs.
really need EPA to take the lead on this.
Yes, we do.
And to put things in perspective, they have not reviewed the .2 gram per brake hour standard, which is the existing standard, for 15 years. So technology has advanced, and I think it's time to try to get that technology on the road.
Exactly.
And in your estimation, would the car manufacturing industry be, I can see them going two ways in this. One, they would fight it because it's additional costs. But on the other hand, they probably would rather have a national standard than have to do individual standards for states.
It's a mixed bag. We've seen the auto manufacturers step up pretty well to the plate when we're talking light duty now, when CARB pressed forward with the low emission vehicle standards, especially the imports. They just specifically testified, give us these gasoline distillation points and we can build the vehicles. So that worked pretty well. Where you are seeing resistance on the light duty side is on the mileage standard that were based on the Pavley bill that went national. So, yeah, it's almost like two different issues when you talk about criteria pollutants and carbon dioxide.
So you're saying, so for Ventura County, if we were able to do this, we could meet our numbers?
Yeah, I think we'll be able to meet it even without it.
Yes.
But I think if California is going to move forward, which they're going to have to assist South Coast and the San Joaquin, we'd be in a lot better shape if it was a national standard.
Yes.
The other thing is, as you see our port starting becoming more innovative and bringing in new customers, there's the potential that people are going to say, well, what's this truck traffic doing to my community? And I think if we mitigate that before it ever becomes a problem, we're going to be able to protect those jobs at the port.
Right, because that was going to be my other question, was the fiscal impact of this law.
I think it will increase, basically looking at the cost effectiveness. I'm not that familiar with the price of interstate trucks, but for stationary sources, we do not adopt any measure over $18,000 per ton reduced, either reactive organic compounds or nitrogen oxides. These controls are estimated to be $3,000 to $4,000 per ton. So quite cost effective and much more cost effective than trying to get additional reductions from the already regulated stationary sources.
Okay, yes.
I had a chance to take just a glance at different trucks and things. How many do you think are licensed outside of California?
The majority,
Yes.
absolutely.
And so they're going to be exempt from this.
Absolutely.
So therefore, when you're making your figures, you better make sure you're looking at most of them are from out of the state.
They are.
Yes. And that we can't do much about reducing as much as, significantly as if they were in the state.
That's correct.
And
That's
so
one of the issues also of, you look at trying to meet the Air Resource Board's carbon emissions when you're putting sustainable community plans together in your San Diego, for example, and everything from Mexico is coming over. So it's not just between states, it's also between countries.
That's what I mean. We don't have a lot of control over the trucks from other areas. And they know to put their trucks in other cities, other areas. They know that. And so that's why I'm wondering, I hate to chase off what we do have into other states. Purchase or manufacture. I don't know of any truck manufacturing companies in California, to tell you the truth.
I don't
There are
either.
truck sales places,
Yes, there are.
and they may suffer some. Sorry.
So we're definitely going to press the EPA on this issue, and I think on my next item,
It's a start.
it's just such a large emission reduction potentially that it's worth chasing, and it's cost effective.
Just for clarification.
For clarification here on my part, for purposes of this agenda item, are we not simply looking at authorizing you to sign this letter that's attached in support of the what would occur on the national level? Or in doing so, is that also then putting us in a position where we have to implement the ultra-low nitrogen oxide exhaust emission standards here in California.
Yes.
Well, this action is just to have me authorize a letter seeking a federal nationwide rule.
Yeah.
The California Air Resources Board is already moving on
Okay.
this standard, so
So tonight, today, we're not really dealing with CARB.
we're not.
We're only
Not-
dealing with the
The
national.
letter.
That's
EPA.
right,
Okay.
only EPA.
Authorization.
That's okay. You just kept mentioning it, I'm going, no.
So you need a motion then?
Yes, a motion would be in order?
So moved.
Chair Bullock, excuse me, I'm sorry. For the record, we do need to note that we did receive a letter from South Coast Air Quality Management District for this item.
So noted, I think we all received a copy of that.
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion, did I have a second?
A second?
So moved, okay.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay, the letter is authorized.
Once I figured you out about feds only, okay.
Okay, item 11 is to receive and file a study session regarding potential local impacts from changes in air quality programs at the federal level.
Yeah, I wanted
Mr.
to
Davis.
give your board a quick report on the potential changes we're seeing with the new federal EPA. First off, as you're aware, the district's annual operating budget is approximately $8 million. Our federal grant accounts for just over $1 million, which is not the lion's share, but it's certainly significant. The original budget proposal from the Office of Budget and Management basically wants to reduce these grants to state and local air agencies by 30%. OMB's budget proposal would be a significant cut for our district. $300,000 will definitely have an impact on us. There's no doubt we'd be able to meet our mandates, although there would probably be some reductions in the level of service we provide. When you look at the lion's share of how district revenue comes in, we receive monies via the DMV fees for motor vehicle-related projects. We also receive monies from permittees for permit program-related work. Then we receive the federal grant. But when you really look at some programs such as vessel speed reduction, which is not a motor vehicle and it's not a stationary source, these federal grant monies are critical for us when we implement those programs. Another source of work for us is complaints, which may not be related to a permitted facility, and we're not supposed to use permit fees, and they're not motor vehicles. So this federal grant is very helpful there. And then when you look at projects such as the Santa Susana Field Lab, our review and comment on those environmental impact statements, environmental impact reports, we utilize monies that don't come from motor vehicles or permitted facilities. So there could be some impacts there. And believe me, I will be sending a letter to Administrator Pruitt outlining the challenges we have here in Ventura County. It's warm. Our topography works against us as far as ozone formation. And just letting them know that our philosophy here has been to work with the regulated community and only implement feasible and cost-effective regulations. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with how we run programs in our jurisdiction with the new EPA. And just let them know that these monies are critical to prevent the permitted facilities from paying for the entire cost of the stationary source program related to air quality. They're also recommending elimination of the Diesel Emission Reduction Act grant program. Port of Hueneme did receive $500,000 via this program for their shore power project. The good news there is it looks like they're going to propose to use VW settlement monies to backfill this program, so it may very well work out. But they're also proposing significant cuts to both the climate programs and environmental justice. The positive there is there are several environmental justice policies already in place, so I think that program's going to keep moving along. The big issue for California is the California Air Resources Board has made great strides in reducing emissions through waivers from the Federal Clean Air Act. This allows the California Air Resources Board to set an emission standard more stringent than a federal requirement. And the perfect example is the California Low Emission Vehicle Program, which applies to light-duty vehicles and trucks. It's done a remarkable job reducing emissions, and 12 other states have opted into this. So now it's a 13-state standard. The Zero Emission Vehicle Program, which is bringing battery electrics and fuel cell vehicles on the road, has been opted into by 9 other states. Without these waivers, we would be in a very difficult situation in efforts to continue making progress to the air quality standards. If EPA were to cease approving these standards, it would be a major step back for California. Although I want you to know, just based on a plain English reading of the Federal Clean Air Act, the sections that cover these waivers, I believe EPA, with respect to criteria pollutants, would have a very difficult time not approving a waiver request. Because EPA, in order to deny it, would have to make a finding that the proposed California standards are not as stringent or effective as the federal standards, which would be rather difficult, or they'd have to make a finding that California does not need this more stringent standard. But of course, we have our topography and our meteorology sets us up for ozone formation, and we have a significant population in this state. So if they made the finding that the less stringent federal standard would get you to attainment, they could deny the waiver. But I see both of those as highly unlikely. Where the issue this could come up is, and where they may try to kind of split the baby, is how does this play in with carbon dioxide? And this could affect California's mileage standards that came from the Pavley bill. So we'll see how that plays out. And lastly, I just want to say, I hope we really take the time to formulate a thoughtful response on this issue. The Administrator Pruitt has been very clear. He is an advocate for state and local air agency funding. And we're going to be working with them on that issue. So I think we may have a chance to make a little headway there. And I realize there's some people already advocating a very aggressive reaction to these potential challenges. There's a potential of basically taking the entire Federal Clean Air Act and all EPA regulations and basically adopting them into California state law. And I would just caution folks on 2 points. First, consider the volume. I mean, we're talking a stack many feet tall of regulations and the Federal Clean Air Act. And second, when EPA updates regulations, sometimes they do it because they need to make the standard more effective or address a problem that makes achieving the standard, the emission standard, less burdensome. So do we really want to lock ourselves into regulations that may need to be updated in the future, such as the source test method or air quality modeling guidance? So I just think let's just take our time and be thoughtful in this response, and let's see how things work out a few months from now. That's all I have. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Are you requesting a study session?
This was kind of my report. In other words, a study
This
session.
is it, right here, study
Yes.
session. Okay, because I
And
see study session, I'm going, okay, another time, huh? And let's stop and do it the other time. Okay, thanks.
Does anyone feel the need to study this any further?
We'll get a little more
Okay,
detail on
then.
some of it.
A motion would be in order to receive and file.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move on to item number 12, receive and file a report regarding the California Air Resources Board's technical systems audit of the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District Air Monitoring Program. Mr. Villegas.
Yes, in September of last year, CARB completed a technical systems audit of our monitoring program. And basically, they found that it was well-managed, well-run program. And in general, we met or exceeded all EPA requirements on the air monitoring side. Staff was knowledgeable, and the availability of our quality management documents was very good. And we met or exceeded all EPA requirements on the quality assurance side. But they did have 6 findings. 3 of them related to standard operating procedures. I'm going to cover those first. The first related to standard operating procedures for actual calibration and verification checks for our monitoring equipment. And we definitely knew ours were out of date. Our plan was to start utilizing some of the Air Resources Board's standard operating procedures, but those were also out of date. So we have made a commitment to complete this work by the end of this year. The next one dealt with the operating procedures for our data verification. Basically, they see, calibration of the equipment as one task and bringing that data, quality assuring it, and uploading it to the federal EPA and CARB as another. We committed to have those procedures to them by June of this year. And the last dealt with, we're adopting their quality management plan and quality assurance project plan with just some amendments, and we'll have those amendments to them in the near future also. That's 3 of the findings. The next one is one that's already closed. When we were rolling out new monitors, we switched from a particulate matter monitoring system that was filter-based, and basically these filters ran either every 3rd day or every 6th day. So we were getting data at most every 3rd day in this county, and we switched to a new monitor that is continuous. So we think it's much more protective of public health. But when we first rolled out the first unit for this, we encountered a problem with it in 2012 and another in 2013. Both of these instances, unit had to go back to the manufacturer and it was out for service for a bit of time. And basically now that we have backup units and the newer versions of these units seem to be working well, this will not occur in the future. They noted that we have the backup units ready to go, so they've already closed this finding. And another one is that's already closed is the corrective action notification. This really applies to a larger agency where you could have a miscommunication between the information systems division staff and the monitoring staff, let's say on a data acquisition issue. And basically we've come up to speed on their procedures and we've committed to do them should the situation ever arise. And the last was, well, they noted we had good training program and we were doing a good job with cross-training. They wanted us to document that training, which we are doing already. So with that, I think we've done a good job getting the data. It's accurate. I think we're doing a great job moving to daily, continuous PM monitoring, because you could have a wildfire and you could be potentially down at least 2 days without data. Now we've got that continuous data. It's providing us some really interesting information. We used to always say there was not a wood fireplace smoke issue in Ventura County, but on cold nights, we're seeing the signature in Ojai of it now, so that's something we may look at. But with that, I think it's going to go a long way helping with succession planning, having everything documented also. That's all I have.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, just for my own information, how often does the Quality Management Branch do this kind of an audit? This was done, I see, in 2015.
Every 5 years?
Okay, and then my only comment is it's impressive to see that, these findings were corrected the way, as quickly as they were done. It couldn't have been easy, but
No.
kudos to, all of you that were working
Well,
on
I
it.
think it's also going to benefit with people purchasing the low-cost monitors now. If there's ever an issue with, I think your monitor is incorrect, and my little backyard $200 unit is showing something different, we can really back it up now. And before that was never a possibility because we were the only people with the monitors.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, motion would be in order to receive and file.
Move to receive and file.
Is there a second? Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're done with item 12. And on to item 13, which is our correspondence agenda. And we have a letter from Ms. Sarah Bartholomew of the U.S. EPA regarding the end-of-the-year grant evaluation for our air pollution control district. Okay, motion to receive and file. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, it's passed unanimously, and that brings us to the end of our agenda. We do have a standing committee meeting right after this up on the 4th floor, but we are now adjourned until our next meeting in April.
One thing real quick, Mr. Villegas and I will be going to the Tri-Counties meeting on the 29th, and we'll see how they're handling some of this stuff with the EPA. It'll be kind of interesting to see how they're doing it.
Just kept the seat warm for you.